WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting your 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. ECOWAS presses Guinea-Bissau's junta to publish election results and free political prisoners.
If ECOWAS doesn't, make it for these results to be announced, it means that democracy is dead.
Political campaign kicks off in Guinea ahead of December 28 presidential election.
The campaign I would like to lead is aimed first and foremost at women.
Guinea shattered the glass ceiling. It became a reality in less than 3 years. Extraordinary portrait.
Ghana's President Mahama forward petition to Chief Justice seeking removal of election chair, deputies and special prosecutor. And in Mali, authorities recover billions of CFA following mining sector audit. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko. Many thanks for joining our broadcast. The Newslink begins with the latest political development. First, in Guinea-Bissau, where the Economic Community for West African States, ECOWAS, is intensifying efforts to restore constitutional order in the country following the November 26 coup. On Monday, December 1, a delegation led by the regional bloc's chair, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio, met with military leaders in Bissau and urged them to publish the results of the November 23 elections and release all political prisoners. So far, both sides have described the meeting as fruitful, with commitments made to pursue practical and achievable solutions to the country's ongoing crisis. Augustine Colley reports.
The ECOWAS delegation was received in Bissau by the military, which seized power nearly a week ago. However, the absence of representatives from Senegal, Togo and Cape Verde, the three countries designated as mediators in the political crisis in Guinea-Bissau, did not go unnoticed. After several hours of closed-door talks, both parties described the exchanges as fruitful. Alhaji Timothy Musa Kaba, Sierra Leone's Minister of Foreign Affairs, made these remarks after the meeting.
On the part of ECOWAS, the chair of the authority condemned the coup and calls for the immediate restoration of constitutional order, which includes allowing the electoral process to a logical conclusion. On the other part, from the side of the high-ranking military officers, they expressed their reasons for why the takeover of government. In their words, to ensure that they restore order and security in the country. And we look forward to further engagement that will bring this country back to constitutional rule.
Regarding the publication of the November 23 general election results, the Electoral Commission stated it is not technically prepared to release them immediately. The proposed one-year time frame for the military transition in Guinea-Bissau will be submitted to ECOWAS in the coming weeks. Concerning the release of detained political figures, the military authorities have pledged to ensure their release.
Augustine Colley filed that report. Now, meanwhile, in Guinea, political campaigns are underway ahead of the presidential election scheduled for December 28, 2025. The 9 candidates, including the military leader General Mamadi Doumbouya, have already taken to the streets to launch their campaigns. While General Doumbouya is relying on his record in power to win the support of Ghanaian voters, the other candidates are seeking to convince the population by presenting new visions for political, social and economic governance. Abdullah Hassan has the rest of the details.
General Mamadi Doumbouya's campaign team officially launched its electoral activities on Monday in the Matam district. Prime Minister Amadou Riba and the campaign director focused their speeches on General Doumbouya's record, urging Guineans to renew their trust in him.
Guinea shattered the glass ceiling with the concrete that the train wrestled through, something many generations of Guineans had dreamed of. It became a reality in less than 3 years. That's extraordinary portrait.
For his part, Abdoulaye Yero Baldé, former minister during Alpha Conde's regime and candidate of the Fondek party, promises to guarantee freedoms and reform the justice system.
The new Guinea will be built very soon, where young people, women, everyone will have their place. a Guinea where justice will prevail, where freedom of the press and freedom of thought will be respected.
On the same day, Dr. Makali Kamara, the only female candidate in the December 28 presidential election, emphasized the promotion of women in power during her political rallies.
The campaign I would like to lead is aimed first and foremost at women. Those get up early and go to bed late are full-fledged Guineans and the right to exercise power.
The state guaranteed a subsidy of 2 billion Guinean francs to each candidate and deployed security teams to ensure their protection throughout the electoral process.
A report from WDR's Conakry correspondent, General Ibrahim Balde, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan. Elsewhere in Benin, 5 political parties have been approved to contest the legislative elections scheduled for January 11, 2026. On Monday, December 1, 2025, the National Autonomous Electoral Commission, SENA, published the list of the selected parties. According to SENA, the publication followed a thorough technical, legal and administrative review of the documents submitted by political parties for next year's legislative polls. The Electoral Commission, chaired by Seka Lafia, states that no substantive irregularities were identified during the evaluation process. Francis Boniface tells us more in this report.
The 5 political parties are Kauri Force for an Emerging Benin, Progressive Union for Renewal, Bloc Republican, Movement of Committed Elites for the Emancipation of Benin, and the Democrats. In its publication, the National Autonomous Electoral Commission, SENA, states that these political parties met the legal and regulatory requirements regarding the conformity and completeness of their files. The review was conducted based on reports from technical teams, the physical and digital documents submitted by each party, as well as the deliberations of the Electoral Council during its session on November 27, 2025. According to the decision, the files of the 5 parties were thoroughly examined. The compliance verification stage also revealed no substantial deficiencies. SENA indicates that all elements required by the Electoral Code, the Charter of Political Parties, and the regulations governing legislative elections were submitted within the allotted time frame of November 15, 2025. This validation paves way for the issuance of final receipts to the concerned parties in accordance with Article 2 of the decision.
Francis Boniface with that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama has forwarded to the Chief Justice 10 petitions seeking the removal of the Electoral Commission chairperson, including 2 deputies and a special prosecutor. 7 of the petitions target elections chairperson Jean Mensah and her 2 deputies, Dr. Bosman Eric Asare, in charge of corporate, and Samuel Teti, responsible for operations. 3 of the petitions concern the removal of the special prosecutor, Kisi Ajabeng. WDR's Nadi Dictator reports.
A total of 7 petitions have been lodged against the leadership of the Electoral Commission, targeting Chairperson Jean Mensah and her 2 deputies, Dr. Bosman Asare and Samuel Teti. 3 others are calling for the removal of the Special Prosecutor Kisi Ajabeng. Under Ghana's Constitution, the EC chair and deputies enjoy the same conditions of service and removal processes as justices of the Superior Courts. Article 146 of the Constitution requires that once the President receives a petition, it must be forwarded to the Chief Justice to determine whether a prima facie case exists. If one is established, 5-member committee comprising Supreme Court justices and 2 non-political members is constituted to investigate and make recommendations which the President is bound to follow. A similar procedure applies to the Special Prosecutor under Section 15 of the Office of the Special Prosecutor Act. Petitions for the Special Prosecutor's removal must also go to the President, who is required to refer them to the Chief Justice within 7 days. As with the Electoral Commission, the President must act strictly in accordance with the committee's recommendations. Minister of Government Communications Felix Kwachifosu confirmed the news.
At this stage, the process has left the hands of the President. Beyond conveying the petitions to the Chief Justice for the processes to continue, there is little else that the President does in this particular instance. Everything now rests with the Chief Justice, who I believe will act in accordance with Ghanaian law.
Programs Director at CDD Ghana, Paula Brampa, is urging caution in the process.
We need that to make sure that our institutions account for their stewardship. But we also wanted us to be careful so that we don't build institutions that people serving in those institutions will be shaky anytime there's a change in government. Otherwise, we will never have resilient institutions that will be able to capably deliver on their mandate.
For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Crossing over to the Central Sahel region, specifically Mali, where the transitional authorities have recovered several billion CFA francs following a 3-year audit for the mining sector. The commission, responsible for negotiating and agreements with mining companies, presented its audit report on Monday to the president of the transition, General Assimi Goïta. Since coming to power, the transitional authorities have undertaken a series of reforms in the mining sector, including the adoption of the 2023 Mining Code, which guarantees the state a 30% share in mining operations. Imo Edet completes the story.
The final report of the Commission negotiating with mining companies on a target of 400 billion CFA francs reveals more than 760 billion were recovered during the 3 years of audit. All mining companies operating in Mali are now subject to the new mining code adopted in 2023. It allows the Malian state to obtain from the audited companies an annual revenue of nearly 590 or 30%. Mamadou Touré is an expert and member of the commission. He says,
We
are committed to recovering approximately 400 billion CFA francs and enabling the companies to continue their operations under new conditions. The second objective was a structural one, which essentially aimed to restore balance to these mining agreements so that the state's share would not remain the sole source of revenue. Therefore, it was a matter of rebalancing these mining agreements. It was about ensuring the state's effective participation in these mining companies and also ensuring the relevance and effectiveness of oversight in all mines. For several years, the Malian authorities have taken a series of measures aimed at strengthening transparency in the management of the country's mineral resources. The Minister of Finance and Economy, Alusini Sanu, praised the work of the Commission.
The Negotiation and Renegotiation Committee faced all sorts of internal and external adversities, intimidations and reprisals. Determination and commitment, teamwork and foresight enabled them to successfully complete this high-fought battle and emerged with honor.
Recall, this audit of Mali's mining sector comes a few days after the end of the standoff between the state and the Canadian company Barrick Gold, which operates the Liulo Ngoto mine located in the south of the country.
Imo Edet with the details of that report filed by our correspondent Aliu Cham in Bamako. Burkina Faso has opened a national conference on maritime and land transport as the country looks to overhaul a sector heavily affected by ongoing security challenges. The 3-day meeting, which began Monday in Ouagadougou, brings together government officials and industrial actors to access the entire transport system and chart strategic reforms. The discussion comes amid renewed concern over road safety after a traffic accident near Boromo claimed at least 7 lives just days before the conference opened. Prime Minister Jean-Emmanuel Ouedraogo says that the goal is to reinvent the transport sector. The conference is set to conclude on Wednesday, December 3, with key decisions expected. For environmental issues, let's turn to the Gambia, where 25th session of the African Forestry and Wildlife Commission is underway in the capital, Banjul. Convened by the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources in collaboration with Food and Agriculture Organization FAO, the event brings together more than 200 delegates from 47 countries. Over the next 4 days, participants will assess the state of Africa's forest and wildlife under the theme Innovative and Inclusive Forests and Wildlife Resource Management for Africa. WDR's correspondent Sang Donald Mendy reports from Banjul.
In the Gambia, national assessments similarly indicate a steady reduction in both forest cover and quality. Regions such as Fonyi in the West Coast region, once known for their dense woodlands and high rainfall, are now experiencing rapid degradation linked to rising fuel wood demand, shifting land use patterns, and increasingly erratic weather conditions. Mandisa Masologo, resident representative of the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) in the Gambia, highlights these concerns.
Wildlife trafficking
continues to undermine ecosystem balance. Coastal erosion, rising sea levels, and saline intrusion are already costing governments millions and limiting the development gains that have been made so far.
Representing the government of the Gambia, Vice President Mohamed B.S. Diallo urged delegates to unite in efforts to protect Africa's forest and wildlife.
Let us take this week not only to exchange knowledge, but to strengthen our resolve, consolidate our unity, and advance our unapologetically African agenda.
According to the Worldwide Fund for Nature's latest Living Planet report, wildlife populations in Africa have declined by an average of 76% since 1970, a trend driven by habitat destructions, expanding agricultural frontiers, and the growing impact of climate change. Delegates at this conference are expected to deepen cooperation, share innovative approaches, and chart a more resilient path for the continent's natural resources. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Sangdana Mendy, reporting from Banjul.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. ECOWAS presses Guinea-Bissau's junta to publish election results and free political prisoners. Political campaign kicks off in Guinea ahead of December 28 presidential election. Ghana's President Mahama forwards a petition to Chief Justice seeking removal of election chair, deputies, and special prosecutor. And in Mali, authorities recover billions of CFA following mining sector audit. Still ahead, we have the press review, guest interview, and sport news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
To some health matters now, Nigeria has renewed its pledge to end HIV and AIDS epidemic and strengthen support for people living with the infection. At a national event held in Abuja to commemorate World AIDS Day, government officials, partners and advocates highlighted both the progress achieved and the work that still lies ahead. Despite the country's efforts to combat the disease for over decades, sustained political commitment and community-driven action remain essential to ending the epidemic. WDR's correspondent Osman Omar reports.
Nigeria's commemoration of World AIDS Day in Abuja offered both reflection and renewed determination as government officials reiterated the country's commitment to achieving a HIV-free generation. At the gathering, the First Lady, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, said the steady decline in new infections and increased access to treatment show that Nigeria is on the right track, but warned that the momentum must not slow.
In the past year, our national focus has been on eliminating vertical transmission, expanding pediatrics HIV treatment coverage, and strengthening local sustainability of HIV response.
The First Lady's message was reinforced by Director General of the National Agency for the Control of AIDS, Dr. Temitokwe Ilori, who outlined new strategies that place local ownership, community engagement, and sustained investment at the center of national response efforts. While officials highlighted achievements, the human face of the struggle also took center stage. Goprin Seilneng, who contracted HIV just days after birth, recounted years of stigma and the barriers many still encounter despite progress in treatment access.
I was not born with it. My parents are not reactive. My siblings are not reactive. I was born premature, and through the process of that, I was infected by HIV. Stigma is something that is reoccurring, whether it's not for me, there are other people who have been stigmatized. And yes, I've been stigmatized in one way or the other.
Advocates at the event stressed that ending HIV requires confronting discrimination, scaling up testing, and ensuring that no one is left behind, especially children and vulnerable communities. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Let's join Abraham Parker for the press review from Liberia.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Press Review from Liberia's capital, Monrovia. And we begin with the Heritage News paper. Montserrato Magibi going to Bassett top HIV breeding. George denies government request to act on indictment. Senator Darius Dillon endorses Labour peace as he reconciles work permit dispute. Up next is front page Africa newspaper with volume 18, number 227, and it goes with these stories. Intanya Raft widens as House of Representatives and the Senate clash over constitutional rules in budget hearing process. Flexing legislative muscles. Prosecution seeks third jury remover in capital arson trial. Certain CDC link. Defense accuses state of targeting pioneer after repeated setbacks. Up next is the Daily Observer newspaper. Liberia and Asia deepen educational partnership. Veteran Liberian journalist Frank Lobo lies ill at John F. Kennedy Hospital. Major development projects are stalled in Nimba. And Liberia celebrates War Aids Day, calls for domestic financing. Well, that does it for this edition of Press Review from Liberia's capital, Monrovia. Thanks so kindly for listening. It's back to you in studio.
Well, thank you very much, Abraham Parker, with the Press Review from Liberia.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, the guest interview segment focuses on the development in Guinea-Bissau, where ECOWAS is stepping up efforts to restore constitutional order after the November 26 coup. On Monday, December 1, a high-level delegation led by Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio met with the military leadership in Bissau, urging them to release the political prisoners and publish the disputed November 23 election results. Both sides called the talks fruitful, with the pledges to work toward practical solutions to the crisis. Well, for more analysis on these developments, we are now joined by political analyst Mamadou Chor.
I think ECOWAS has to do the same way it did in Gambia after the election in 2016, with Yahya Jammeh refusing the results coming from the election. The first step is to talk to the military and convince them that, there is no way this electoral process should be carried out, thoroughly. Meaning we have to listen to the chairperson of the Electoral Commission for him to give the results. And if Fernando Diaz is the winner, so that's it. There's no other issue.
How significant is the push to publish the November 23 election results in resolving this crisis? How significant is that?
If ECOWAS doesn't, make it for all member states in the West African region for these results to be announced, it means that democracy is dead. It means that you can organize election, and if you are sure you are the loser, you can do the same way as Mbalo did in Guinea. And that's why ECOWAS has to be firm and make it sure that even if it is necessary, they can bring in military forces as they did in Gambia. We remember our former president then Macky Sall, mobilized our army with the other army, and then they went to the Gambian border. That's the same way. Show them with the Nigerian forces, the other ECOWAS forces, show them that if you don't comply with what we want, meaning giving the results, will bring in the military and then will bring you down.
The argument for some people is that in the case of the Gambia, the results were officially announced and everybody knows who the winner was before Jammeh decided to overturn the results. Some would tell you, well, in the case of Guinea-Bissau, the results were not officially announced. So should ECOWAS really go in without such a base?
Yeah, the situation is not that different because we were waiting the results to be published the day after. So this so-called coup occurred the day before. I think we could have known who's the winner of this election the day after the election, meaning on Monday. So how can you understand waiting for 3 to 4 days for only 800,000 people who went to the ballot? This is easily counted and we can know who is the winner. So there is no other way to do, but try to get this person chairing the Electoral Commission come out. People are saying that he's at the Nigerian embassy, allow him to come public, make the results known, tell the military, your place is in the barracks, not leading the country.
Finally, sir, before I let you go, both parties, Guinea-Bissau authorities said the talks were fruitful, but from your assessment, how likely is it that the commitments made in the meeting will translate into real political progress?
If ECOWAS is not firm, what we are seeing in Guinea-Bissau is Embalo is a bit far in Congo, but he's preparing for a comeback. Look at the government in place. With his brothers, sisters, and things like that. With this military as the new head of state, is a close person to him. What will be happening? They say 1 year. 1 year will be enough for them, to get rid of the main opposition leader who is currently in jail. Because, the main nightmare for Embalo is Domingo Simões Pereira. How to get rid of him and the historic party of PAIGC. Because he knew that as long as they will be there in place, there is no way for him to win the election. So that's why if ECOWAS are not making it clear that there is no other issue than respect the willingness of the people of Guinea-Bissau, if it is necessary, the military will come in and then restore order.
Mamadou Chor is a political analyst. Well, in sports, let's begin with basketball because Nigeria's the Tigers snapped their losing streak in the FIFA World Cup African qualifiers, beating Rwanda 75-69 in overtime in Reds, Tunisia. After trailing at halftime, Nigeria rallied in the third quarter and held on in extra time for the win. Guinea also impressed, defeating host Tunisia 66-57 to maintain a perfect 3-0 record in Group C. In football, Cameroon's AFCON squad faces chaos after coach Marc Breeze was sacked, and several key players, including goalkeeper Andre Onana and captain Vincent Abubakar, were left out of the 28-man squad. Meanwhile, CAF has condemned serious safety breaches during the November 28 CAF Champions League matches and has submitted an incident for the investigation. The Confederation also held a conference preparation course in Cairo ahead of the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco for match officials, fondly called or better known as referees. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu So and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live at WADR.org. I am Sankule Janko. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your